Jobs will be to try and cool off the red-hot George Brett, who's driven home 10 runs in his last 4 games, including these 2 last night, as the Royals beat Britt Burns and the White Sox 8-4, stretching Chicago's losing streak to 4 games.
Presents the Major League Baseball Game of the Week. Today from Royal Stadium, it's the Chicago White Sox versus the Kansas City Royals. The Game of the Week is brought to you by Ford, who invites you to drive the new Ford Escort. Have you driven a Ford lately? By Armor All. It's science, but it works like magic. By Light Beer from Miller. Everything you've always wanted in a beer, and less. And by Move Cargo Coils, the car springs that smooth the road and carry the load.
It'll be a hot one today in Kansas City. Temperatures will climb into the mid-80s as the Royals play host to the Chicago White Sox. Hi, everybody. Bob Costas along with Tony Kubek. Today's pitching pairing, Tom Seaver, 8 away from 300 lifetime goes for the White Sox, opposed by left-hander Charlie Leibrandt for the Royals. Earlier this week, the White Sox went into Toronto. They lost 3 straight. Then they dropped the opener here last night, so they're on a 4-game losing streak. And part of Tony La Russa's problem has been the slumping Harold Baines, who was tailed off after a hot start, and Ron Kittle, who has never found a groove so far in 1985. For the Royals side of the story, let's go down to the field and Tony Kubek.
All right, thanks, Bob. With me on the field, the manager of the Kansas City Royals, last year's divisional champs in the West American League, Dick Hauser. And Dick, a very short time ago, John Scherholz, general manager, made what a lot of people think might change the balance in the Western Division American League. You went out and got Lonnie Smith. What does that do for your lineup?
Well, Tony, I think in the wintertime, we went to Houston. We thought we'd like to bring in another offensive player. We couldn't get it done in the wintertime. Everybody was asking for our young pitching, and we didn't feel like we could give that up. We did have to give up a young outfield prospect, but I think if you look at our lineup now with Wilson first and Smith second, and we've got some very good hitters in behind those guys, there are very few clubs in baseball that have the offensive catalyst up front like we do now, and I think it's going to pay big dividends for us.
What will it do as far as your running game? The Kansas City Royals over the last few years aren't the running team that they were a few years ago. They've been more of a power club, actually.
Tony, we just haven't had, we've had some pretty good speed, but we've had Willie Wilson and some average to above average runners. Now we've got 2 guys that are bona fide 50 to 80 stolen base guys a year, and it's going to make a difference.
And with George Brett hitting the way he's been something, what, 10 RBIs the last 4 ball games. Dick, our thanks to you. We'll be back to Royal Stadium in Kansas City with the starting lineups right after this message.
Hi, this is Bob James, lead pitcher of the Chicago White Sox. Welcome to NBC's Game of the Week. Our first hitter today will be Scotty Fletcher playing third base. Second will be Tom Pachorik at first base. Our third hitter is going to be Harold Baines, right field. Fourth hitter is going to be the DH, Carlton Fisk. Left field is going to be Ron Kittle batting 5th. Luis Salazar is going to be batting 6th in center field. Mark Hill is going to be the catcher today, batting 7th. Timmy Hill is going to be the second baseman, batting 8th. And Ozzie Guillen is going to be batting 9th. The pitcher is going to be Tom Seaver. If he gets in trouble, I'll be there.
And speaking of getting in trouble, as it involves Bob James, I'm glad to see that you and he have smoked the peace pipe, Tony.
Well, we'll talk about that if we set this defense, Bob. Lonnie Smith over from the Cardinals in left field. Willie Wilson, he gets some balls that I don't believe Willie Mays could have gotten to with that great speed he has in center field. Pat Sheridan slumping with the bat in right field, having a little throwing problem also. George Brett at third, Onyx Concepcion the shortstop, Frank White at second, Steve Balboni had some trouble starting the 3-6-3 double play recently at first base, Jim Sundberg, the Iron Man, catching, and Charlie Leibrandt on the mound. We showed Bob James doing that lineup for a specific purpose. All these kids have been watching cartoons all morning. Let their parents see this. We'll show you what violence in television really looks like.
Charlie Leibrandt off to a 4-2 start this year. He's already pitched 3 complete games, and in the past, finishing what he started was a problem for Leibrandt. Prior to this year, he hadn't thrown a complete game since September of 1981. He was the American League's Pitcher of the Month in April, as he picked up where he left off in October of 1984. You recall the masterpiece he threw in Game 3 at Detroit, a heartbreaker. The Royals lost it 1-0 as the Tigers completed the playoff sweep.
Charlie Leibrandt, who came over in what looked like an insignificant minor league deal. Left-hander Bob Tufts. Leibrandt went down to Omaha, was 7-1. This is kind of the veteran of the starting staff. With all those young kids like Saberhagen, Gubazad, Danny Jackson last night. He has learned to change speeds. Use both the inside edge and the outside edge of the plate. And also change speeds off the slider. The throw a little change up. It's called the circle change, and looked like a screwball on occasion. Tony La Russa talking to home plate umpire Jerry Neudecker. Just saw Neudecker. He's behind home plate. One of the last with the inflatable chest protectors. I think there's just 2 left. Late Bill Kunkel passed away recently. With Larry McCoy, Steve Palermo, Dave Phillips.
Phillips is the crew chief. You know, it's an interesting thing you mentioned about the young Kansas City staff. Tom Seaver, who starts today for the White Sox, has started 594 games in his career. The entire Royals staff, including those not presently in the rotation but on the roster, have less than 400 starts between them. And Seaver has 292 lifetime victories. The entire Royals staff, relievers and starters combined, have 213. Scott Fletcher, the third baseman, hitting .250, had 2 hits last night. He steps in to start it. First pitch swinging, and another base hit for Fletcher. He's a good little ball player, this guy. Can play second, short, or third base, and opens the ball game with a single.
You mentioned about Leibrandt being the pitcher of the month in the American League with a 3-0 record in the month of April. He has struggled a little bit in May. 1-2. His ERA's gone up over 4 over that period. He can't pitch upstairs where he just tried to. He's got to keep the ball down, although this is a very forgiving ballpark with the dimensions, the power alley's long. You can throw some long fly balls here and get away with it.
Tom Paciorek starting today at first base. Greg Walker sitting down against the left-hander. Strike 1. Tony La Russa continues to stick with Ron Kittle, despite the fact that Kittle has suffered lately. Boy, what a horrendous slump he's been in.
Well, with 3 left-handers starting for Dick Hauser this weekend series, going to be a very important time for Ron Kittle if he wants to retain his spot in the lineup.
Danny Jackson last night, Leibrandt today, and Bud Black to close the series tomorrow against Floyd Bannister.
Leibrandt doesn't have an outstanding move to first base. He can quicken his delivery home. And because he's usually around the strike zone, he's not a bad pitcher to start runners on. And La Russa, trying to generate some offense, may start some people today.
Swing foul. It's 0-2.
That's where he is so good. He has learned to cut that little fastball and slider and break bats of right-handed hitters. He throws the changeup away, and the hitters start leading over the outside corner. Saw him against Toronto earlier this year. He must have broken 4 or 5 right-handed hitters' bats.
Fletcher back easily. Leibrandt at age 28 is the oldest of the Royals starters. As a group, the starting staff averages 24 years of age. The oldest pitcher on their entire staff is Dan Quisenberry at 32, and he's the only pitcher remaining from their 1980 pennant-winning team. Lofted into center field. Willie Wilson breaks in on it. Waves Sheridan off, makes the catch.
I was talking earlier when we were setting up the defense about Willie Wilson getting the balls that I don't believe Willie Mays could have gotten to. I think he gets the balls that no other center field in the game can get to today. Maybe not as consistently as some do, like a Pettis or somebody else, but he just outruns balls. He did it last night. The only problem is his throwing arm. He's got a left fielder's throwing arm.
Think he can get to balls Willie McGee can't in St. Louis?
Yeah. I think he's as quick as Willie McGee is and Gary Pettis is, and Murphy's outstanding with Oakland, and there are good ones around, but he just gets in stride. He outruns things more than anybody else.
Baines swings and misses. He's been in a drought. Just 2 hits in his last 30 at-bats, and his average has plummeted to .284. When When it comes to acrobatics in center field, though, nobody rivals Pettis among the active players. He'll go up over the wall and steal a home run several times a season.
One of the reasons they do not think Lonnie Smith will be quite the defensive liability, some feel that he might be in this ballgame, is because Wilson will cover that left center field gap so well.
The runner is going. The pitch is a called strike, and Fletcher steals it. It was a slow curveball, a good pitch to run on.
Concepcion tried to hold his spot as long as he could, and Sundberg's ball tailed back into the runner. Concepcion takes the ball in the outside part of the bag. A little slider. Sundberg trying to get the creaks out after catching the ball game last night. Didn't really pop out of there and throw very strongly. Look at where Concepcion catches that ball. If he catches that ball on the infield side, he's got a chance to get Fletcher. And not a very good tag.
So Fletcher at second with one out on the 0-2 to Baines. Moves him away. Carlton Fisk, who is DHing today, with Mark Hill catching the day game after a night game, is on deck. There's Pudge. The 1-2. A little pop. Brett in pursuit. And he has room.
Boy, does he know his own ballpark? He knew right where he was, that dugout area. Took a peek. Flipped the glasses down. Most of Brett's errors come not because he doesn't cover a lot of ground or have good hands. It's been his erratic throwing arm at times. Those who say he's got... In fact, I just read an article in some magazine saying he's a poor defensive third baseman. That's a lot of baloney. He gets to a lot of baseballs.
You send a letter to the editor?
Nah.
Fisk had 2 hits last night. He caught the ball game.
You got first base open, folks, and Fisk is hitting the ball well with Kittle up, and Lee Brandt and Sundberg know it. Got 2 outs, even though it's early in the ball game. You want to get to the guy that is struggling more than the guy that's hitting well, even this early.
How much is Kittle struggling? He's at 143. Fisk, meanwhile, at 270 with 8 home runs already.
Fisk is no dummy. He knows these situations from his catching days. There's Kittle on deck.
Wait a minute. Just what is going on here?
Custer's last stand is over with. Ron, have to put the war paint on.
When guys get into a slump, the things they will do.
Fisk knows that Lee Brandt and Sundberg did not want to throw him a strike. He was taken all the way on the first pitch.
2-0. As play begins today, the Royals trail California by a game and a half in the American League West. The White Sox, who have lost 4 in a row, are 2.5 behind. Sandwiched in between are the Twins, 2 back.
White Sox just coming off a sweep of an exhibition stadium, Toronto. They got swept by them. He threw the strike.
Lonnie Smith going back and almost to the track as he takes it.
Lee Brandt flirted with trouble. He got away with it.
No runs, a hit, a stolen base, a man is left. No score after half an inning.
Here's the lineup to face Tom Seaver with 8 more to go before he hits the magic number 300. Willie Wilson, the switch hitter, leading off in center field. Lonnie Smith in left, Newton number 2 spot. George Brett on a tear, hitting in the number 3 spot. George Orta, who platoons with McRae. He's DHing, hitting cleanup. Steve Balboni in the 5 spot. He's been hitting 4th against left-handed pitchers recently. Pat Sheridan struggling. He's in right field behind Balboni. Frank White in a slump also at second base, although he's got 6 gold gloves under his belt. Jim Sundberg's been in the middle of a lot of rallies lately, hitting on the 8th spot. And Onyx Concepcion at shortstop, batting number 9.
Take a look at the White Sox defense behind Tom Seaver. Kittle, Salazar, and Baines in the outfield. Fletcher, Guillen, Hewlett for the injured Julio Cruz, and Pachorik in the infield, and Mark Hill back of the plate. Seaver's record this season 4-2 after a 15-11 1984.
Last year, year, he shut out the Kansas City Royals twice, so lifetime he's 2-0. And something that may, not that Tom Seaver needs any help, that may help him today,
Coaching for Kansas City.
behind home plate Jerry Neudecker with the inflated chest protector, and most catchers,
leading off
pitchers will tell you with that protector, you will get the high strike
Willie Wilson.
more often. And Seaver is basically a high ball pitcher. Left-hand hitter, he'll show that slow curve, the sliders, sink the ball once in a while, but he gets hitters out up in the strike zone usually.
Willie Wilson takes a ball. This week, he passed 400 stolen bases lifetime. Swiping one against Texas to do it. 2-0.
Among active players, what are there, 5 others? 4 others.
Well, Cedeno is the leader at 536.
Omar Moreno's in there, isn't he? And Ricky Henderson.
I think we've got the list. We'll look at it in a bit. Got the inside corner, 2-1. And there it is. Henderson obviously will overtake Cedeno probably this year. Lopes, Moreno, and Wilson in there. Pachorik,
Better hurry.
Seaver covers and barely beats Wilson to the bag.
A play similar to that beat Tom Seaver in his last outing up in Toronto. Charged with a 2-base there, and Toronto came up with a rally and ended up knocking Seaver out.
21.
I think Tom Seaver doesn't know. Mark Hill, the catcher, you might have heard him up here in our field like yell, "Get over there!" And Seaver ran as fast as he could, and it was still just a half a step difference. Wow. Once he gets going, they can talk about everybody else, and I haven't seen a whole lot of Vince Coleman. Once he gets in full stride, I don't know if anybody's as fast as Wilson.
Let me tell you something. Vince Coleman hit an inside-the-park home run earlier this week against the Braves in St. Louis. When the ball hit the right field wall on the fly, he was around second base already. Here's Lonnie Smith. Takes a ball.
Feeling and hyperbole again.
I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. He was at least at second base when the ball hit the wall. It was a high fly ball. He scored standing up before Glenn Hubbard could catch the relay. When Hubbard turned around, Coleman was crossing the plate.
So you tell me that ball was in the air at least 6 seconds.
It was a towering fly ball, Tony. Believe me. 3-0 to Lonnie Smith. Strike one.
A long hang time for a fly ball.
It's like a Ray Guy punt.
He still gets the ball up on occasion around 90 miles an hour, Tom Seaver.
Down the right field line, Baines chasing after it, and he nabs it in the corner in foul ground.
He does everything so easy, doesn't he? He's got better than average running speed, a better than average throwing arm. You think of him as an offensive player because he's averaged about 99 runs driven in over the last 3 years, 27 home runs, but he's a good defensive outfielder.
So now Brett, who was 3 for 4 last night with 4 RBIs. He's driven home 10 in his last 4 games, including a 2-homer performance earlier this week against Texas, helping Bud Black to a 5-0 win. In the air to shallow left center. It's Kittle who wants it, and he has it. So the Royals go in order in the bottom of the first. No score after 1. This has not been the White Sox favorite stop on the American League Tour since this park opened in 1973. Chicago is 31-49 here. And under Tony La Russa, they've won only 2 series in Kansas City. Both of those happening in 1983, the year the White Sox won the American League West.
It's a park conducive to a team that has speed and can chase the ball down to the alleys defensively. If you've got a stolen base team, the turf helps you. And it cuts down on home runs considerably with those long power alleys you just saw. Straightaway center field, about 410.
Strike one to Kittle. And a roller to second. 6-time Gold Glove winner Frank White throws him out.
That was the circle change that he throws. Don Alexander, the Toronto Blue Jay, has an outstanding one. Mario Soto. Andy Messersmith threw it like that. Put the thumb and the pointing finger together, form a circle, put the ball in the little finger and the 2 fingers next to it. When it rolls off that little finger, it looks like a screwball at times. Tony La Russa trying to snap that 4-game losing streak his team's in right now.
La Russa got a little testy about a week or so ago. Bobby Valentine, the new manager of the Rangers, made a little joke, and Tony didn't appreciate it. Ball 1 to Salazar. You know, especially with fist catching, that White Sox games tend to run long. They played 1-1 about 3.5 hours with the Rangers, and Bobby Valentine said, I wonder if these guys get paid by the hour. And La Russa said, look, this guy wants to be funny. Let him do it at the expense of his own club.
Dick Hauser got mad at him, too, when they played Valentine. There's Hauser. Valentine was yelling at former Dodger Joe Beckwith, now a Kansas City Royal, and Hauser said, look, he does it again to you when you're pitching. Throw the ball at him, and you follow up right in the dugout. We'll all be behind you. That's Bobby Valentine. The exuberance, youth, just like you.
The 2-1 pitch.
He throws a lot of quality pitches within the strike zone, Charlie Liebrandt. You don't see many pitches missed to the center of the plate when he's right. He's using the black, and if you give him a little bit of the outside, he'll take a little bit more with Sundberg.
Reaches for it, rolls it to Concepcion, and 2 gone in the White Sox second.
Concepcion struggled defensively earlier, but he's been outstanding the last 10 dozen games.
Take a look at the 3 batting averages scheduled in this inning. Kittle opened at 143. Salazar, who just rolled out, at 188. And Mark Hill, who steps in now, admittedly in limited duty, is hitting just 111. Ball 1.
Who says there aren't good nicknames around anymore? What would be the logical nickname for Hill?
San Juan.
The Booter, they call him.
Bunker.
Pretty much full hitter. Concepcion's way over in the shortstop hole near Brett. Especially with a guy who can throw that changeup like Liebrandt can, get you way out in front.
Liebrandt was born in Chicago. The 2-1 pitch. Right back to him.
Got 3 hitters out with changeup, all on the end of the bat.
So after an inning and a half in Kansas City, no score, White Sox and Royals. A new surface at Royal Stadium, AstroTurf 8. It ought to be easier on players' legs. It's a softer surface than the old stuff. This is like what they have put in fact, identical to what they have put in St. Louis. If you're going to have artificial surface, I guess this is the best in that it is a dark green. It's not that faded out stuff that's so hard on the eyes.
Grounds crew chairman of the board, George Toma, can throw barrels of water and it's all gone. Right through and into the drainage system within 15 minutes. In fact, they've got to water this to keep the drainage system from plugging up with dirt. They water it to clear it out.
Orta, Balboni, and Sheridan in the Kansas City second against Seaver. Strike 1. All the talk about records and impending milestones for Seaver. He says, I cannot think about the past and what I have done when the present is so all-consuming. That's part of what he's done. Hit hard, and it's off the glove of the diving Pachorik. Orta will try for 2, and he'll make it.
Tom Pachorik did all he could and knock it down, keep it from in the hole. You can see Orta, one time was a good base stealer. He slimmed down quite a bit this year. And Orta's something. Great heritage of Cubans.
Steve Balboni, first base.
See them moving the Cuban Hall of Fame to maybe doing it to Miami. Tony Pacheco, a scout. Orta was actually born in Mexico, but his father was a great, great player down in Cuba.
Balboni now takes ball 1.
Let's see if a lot of the work of hitting instructor Lee Moe has paid off with him. He's trying to get him to go right field at times, and with nobody out, runner on second, he wants to take a shot or 2 there. Cut down his swing, he spreads out a little bit, tries to put the ball in play a little bit more. He'll still get his 150, 60 strikeouts.
Balboni struck out more frequently than any hitter in the American League last year, once every 3.2 at-bats. Hits this one to deep left. But backtracking is Kittle to take it on the track, and Orta just bluffs the go.
Orta made a mistake. He thought that ball was over Kittle's head. He went halfway, and George Orta knows it. You can see him pound his hands together. With Kittle out there backing up, not in good fielding position or throwing position after he caught the ball, and not with a strong throwing arm, Orta should be on third base now. It might change this inning.
Right field.
It was deep enough that on almost any left fielder's arm, you should be on third base.
At this time a year ago, Sheridan was well over the 300 mark, struggling a little bit this time around at 219. Kansas City. RBI single for Sheridan.
Another thing that the acquisition of Lonnie Smith may do is it may spur a guy like Sheridan on, who had such a good year last year, as did Darryl Motley. You put Lonnie Smith in the lineup, it gives you more bench strength.
Frank White, second base.
Seaver sunk a fastball, and Sheridan hit it very crisply, found a hole.
Frank White now. Last year he had a career-high 17 home runs, and he's already slammed 6 this year.
Sheridan can run. White is struggling at the plate, as you see by that average, although the home run RBIs look pretty impressive for second baseman, so they may start a runner, maybe straight steal. Seaver's slow going home, but he will throw over a lot and step off.
Last year, as Tony mentioned previously in the broadcast, Seaver shut the Royals out twice. He pitched 4 shutouts last year, half of them against Kansas City. So the run Sheridan just drove home is the first the Royals have ever scored off Tom Seaver.
Frank White tried to take that last pitch in the gap between Pachorik and the second baseman.
Foul back toward us, 0-2. The Royals have done most of their slugging on the road. They've hit 31 home runs in 22 road games and just 9 homers in 17 games at home.
Now with 2 strikes, Frank White doesn't have quite the luxury of trying to guide the ball the opposite way. Just try and put her in play.
Dimensions here are pretty healthy into the gap, 385, and the ball generally doesn't carry well. Although, for whatever reasons, it seems to carry better during the day than at night. Still 0-2.
Seaver, who made the transition. Power pitcher, although he still can throw the ball by you on occasion. Power pitcher to more of a finesser. Haven't seen that little slow lollipop curve yet today.
It's by Pachorik. Fair by about a foot. Around second is Sheridan. White's going to have a double. Sheridan stops at third.
Not too many years back, when Tom Seaver got you no balls and 2 strikes, no matter how good a hitter you were, he was going to finish you off. You went away with a fastball. Right, White just kind of slapped at it and rifled it by Pachorik. Bruce now. Sundberg, who's got a pretty good RBI bat going. Bruce is going to bring his first baseman in with 1 out and leave the rest of the infield back.
Concepcion, who's hitting 191, is on deck. Strike 1. The second, 1-0 Kansas City, and threatening for more. 1 out, second and third. Check the swing.
Yep, goes to the first base umpire, Larry McCoy. McCoy punches the right hand up.
Said he went around, so it's 1-2.
More often than not, this year, seen on any kind of check swing, the umpires are calling it a strike more than not.
Had to take the ball off the scoreboard. 0-2 is the correct count. And a called strike 3.
Oh, Sundberg was just thinking about that number 2 strike that was called a strike on the appeal.
Batting ninth.
Breaking ball. The ball looks like it's outside edge of the plate, or outside half.
Shortstop.
Jerry Neudecker says, see you later.
First strikeout for Seaver, who's approaching 3,500 lifetime. Foul back by Concepcion for strike 1.
As we look at Sheridan down at third base, Frank White with a double in the right field corner at second. Seaver's always had that great low base on ball innings pitch ratio, great strikeout to base on ball ratio. Although it's changed the last couple of years because he's not the power pitcher he once was. He's walking a few more, but most of the time he's walking guys because he's avoiding certain hitters in the lineup. Wants to pitch around them, get to the weaker hitters, the ones he knows he can get out.
2-1. By the way, Nolan Ryan's all-time leading strikeout total is now at 3,942.
7 yesterday against the Cubs.
First complete game pitched all season against the Cubbies. Astros beat him at Wrigley 6-2. Ryan went the distance.
He's got 200 complete games now, Nolan.
Just off the outside corner, 3-1. Willie Wilson on deck. Full count. The payoff. He walked him, didn't miss by much, and the bases are loaded for Wilson.
So Seaver this inning allowed a base hit, no balls, 2 strikes. Now he just walks the number 9 hitter.
The center fielder.
Right-handed against right-hander. He'll face Wilson now. Boot-Hill tried to frame that pitch and just kind of decoy Jerry Neudecker into thinking it had the outside edge, but he couldn't frame it in far enough.
Wilson bounced to first his first time up.
Wilson a little bit stronger from the left side of the plate. It's a home run out of the ballpark in Cleveland this year. What he's been doing is lifting some weights, especially with his right arm. He's had that stigma of everybody saying that his arm isn't strong enough, throwing arm. I don't think it's strengthened his throwing arm, but I think the benefit is he's got a little more punch with that bottom hand. Drives the ball a little bit more now.
Back to Seaver. And Tom flirts with some serious danger and escapes with only 1 Royal run scoring. 1-0 Kansas City at the end of 2.
Second base.
With Julio Cruz on the 15-day disabled list with a troublesome knee, eligible to come off tomorrow, although he probably won't be ready, the man at the plate right now, Tim Hewlett, has done a great job filling in. He's hitting .365. Ball 1 to him as we start the third. The Royals lead at 1-0.
Bob, with Kittle struggling, that's an area the White Sox and Tony La Russa would really like to improve in. A little more punch from the right side. Left-handers can give them some problems. Those Spains, they get Darrell Boston out of the lineup. Rudy Law out of the lineup. Greg Walker at times, he's not playing today. We've been looking at Jerry Reedus of Cincinnati. White Sox have. Cedeno's name I've heard. Problem could be solved if Kittle gets the home run bat going.
To Hewlett. Guillen and then Fletcher in this inning. Line to center, and it will fall in front of Willie Wilson. So Hewlett continues his hot hitting.
Batting ninth.
I thought it was interesting, an article that one of the fine baseball writers, Kansas City, Tracy Ringolsby, wrote. When Liebrand came up, he threw to Johnny Bench for the Cincinnati Reds, and one of the things Sundberg has insisted on, and last year Don Slaught, that Wathan when he catches, that Liebrand pitch inside. And Liebrand said, when I came up with Cincinnati, Bench didn't want me to pitch inside. He said, so I kept running the ball away, and I kept getting killed. So it's not a knock against Bench. He wanted me to sink the ball away. Now that I'm coming inside, I'm so much more effective to right-handed hitters.
Insofar as I always defer to those with seniority, we continue to call the White Sox shortstop Ozzie Guillen, which may make us the only ones remaining around the American League circuit. Well, they got him picked off.
He tried to get hit by the baseball. Galbonis had trouble with that throw. I don't even know if they had anything on. He may have just got caught leaning, and the Liebrand move and the head motion fooled him. Was he gone? He might have been gone. Not a straight steal, a hit and run. Now he tries to run into the path of the ball. Remember Reggie Jackson did that one World Series against Bill Russell and the Dodgers?
1978.
Yep.
What an argument that touched off. Here's Concepcion applying the tag, and Hewlett is gone. And Guillen fouls one out of play.
Well, you have a choice. You may anglicize Guillen's name, dialectic Venezuelan pronunciation. Remember Davilijo, Winston Jenas.
I always knew Vic as Vic Davalillo.
I know what Ozzie wants. And Luis Leal, a Venezuelan, Toronto, and Luis Salazar, they say it's Guillen.
Well, I know you won't change, and since we strive for consistency, I'll just say Guillen. I'll just go along for the ride. The 2-1 pitch. Reached for it and fouls it away.
That was scored on Hewlett as a caught stealing. If he had been diving in back into the bag and not making an attempt to get the second, it would have been a pickoff. Once you try to advance, as he did, it's a caught stealing.
Concepcion, wicked hop, but he fields it off his ear and throws him out.
That ball hit this very, very springy turf. It's not as fast as the old stuff, but it is very bouncy, and that ball bounded up. You want to see a pair of hands. Guillen goes with the ball very well. Breaking ball outside.
The third baseman, Scott Fletcher.
Picked me a bushel of cherries. Boy, was that nice. There are about 6 different guys tried out at that shortstop spot last year. Concepcion won it at the end of the year. Concepcion struggling with the bat now, but he had a red-hot second half when they made their pennant run last year. Offensively, you just saw what he could do defensively.
Now Fletcher, who opened the game with a single and stole a base, taking strike one.
Remember the end of '83, the pitching staff of the Royals with Splittorff and Gura. They averaged, what, about 33 years of age, and last year they made the change. John Sherholz, Joe Burke. Gooden versus Valenzuela. 1-0 Mets, second inning.
Pitch, 2-1 at the end of 1983. Now, not all these guys were in the rotation necessarily, but they had Gaylord Perry on the roster, Steve Renko. Perry was 42, Renko was 38, Splittorff in his mid-30s, Gura the same. Vida Blue had been released only about a month before, and the youngster of the group was Bud Black. Liebrand throws Fletcher out.
Got a broken back.
That takes care of the White Sox, and we'll be right back. Had a chance to preview that sports fantasy show. That's really going to be an entertaining program, hosted by Len Berman, followed by Sports World Music Videos 2. Breaking ball is high to Lonnie Smith, leading off the Kansas City third. They've got a guy batting against a major league pitcher, a woman driving a pace car at Indianapolis.
Fella doing, what, one inning play-by-play with Harry Carey, the legend.
Some guy wanted to play tennis. Guy in his 50s wanted to play tennis against Chris Everett. 2-1 to Lonnie Smith.
Well, I know you're going to promote that a lot because you've been in on one of those broadcasting one at Wrigley Field.
Oh,
You'll be hearing about that.
30 seconds, 30 seconds, nothing. I don't even think my mom's going to watch it. 2-1 pitch.
Seaver goes to a changeup.
Eugene. Ozzie has made only one error all season, and that error came when he missed second base on a DP pivot. Alan Trammell with the Tigers hasn't booted one yet this season. He's the only guy who's outfielded Eugene at his position.
Took something off a breaking ball. Eugene and Tom Seaver have some signals. When Seaver's going to change his pitching pattern to a certain hitter, he'll turn around and touch his hat, move him over a little bit, and he said, Seaver says, I played with Bud Harrelson. He was so great. He said, but this kid has such tremendous instincts that I hope they just let him alone, is the words that Seaver used. Let him just play a lot, not try and computerize him, robotize him too much.
You know what kind of bat George Brett uses, don't you?
Marvelous Marvs.
A T-85 Marv Throneberry model Louisville Slugger. He has done somewhat better with it than did Throneberry, a .237 lifetime hitter. In the air to left. Kittle has to drift back a little bit and has it for the second out. So Brett has twice flied to left.
The designated hitter.
And that brings up Orta. He doubled and scored in the second.
Brett was saying, in reference to using the Marv Throneberry bat, he said, some of these articles have been coming out the last few years, how bad a defensive player I am. He said, I think I've been using a marvelous Marv Throneberry glove, too.
Remember the story about Throneberry. Hit a triple at the Polo Grounds, 1962, the first year of the Mets. Came against the Cubs. And Ernie Banks called for the ball at first base. They contended that Throneberry had missed the bag, and the umpires agreed, and Marv was out, and they said to Casey, hey, why didn't you go out and argue? And Casey said, it didn't matter. He missed second, too. Hewlett. Easy hop for him. And the Royals go quietly in the third. 3 complete in Kansas City. White Sox trying to break a 4-game losing streak and trailing 1-0. We move now to the 4th inning. Upcoming are the 2 frames baseball fans across the country wait all week for. Tony Kubek will handle the play-by-play.
And I will try and straighten out the Vince Coleman fly ball in which he was standing on second base. Now, this guy's fast.
Folks.
Maybe the fastest in baseball.
Would I mislead you? Do I have any reason to lie to you? The guy was on second base when the ball hit the wall.
Tom Pachorik, Harold Baines, Carlton Fisk. It's Charlie Liebrat. Liebrat with a 1-0 lead. The Royals came up with their run off Tom Seaver in the second. Orta doubled past first base. Balboni flied out. Sheridan singled him home. 1 ball, no strikes to Tom Pachorik. George Brett. He rifles the ball to Balboni. Chance. Tom Pachorik just being retired. I want to congratulate his daughter Shannon. Here's Brett once again, going toward the foul line, throwing Pachorik out. Shannon Pachorik. We got to do this for Tom, a fellow Pole. Class of Immaculate Heart of Mary School out of Georgia. Great class graduating yesterday. Congratulations. 1 out. Harold Baines fouled out. Back in the first. Pops this one left side. Concepcion battling the sun and a slight wind drift. Pushing the ball away from him. 2 out.
So Tony Baines is now 2 for his last 32. And this season is kind of a reversal for him. Usually, this is about the time of the year that he begins to hit his stride. He's usually a very slow starter, and he begins to heat up after a couple of months. He began this year hitting around 350 the first 3 weeks or so, and now he's in a tailspin.
He went to spring training 2 weeks earlier. 2 guys traditionally in the American League end up putting power numbers on the board, RBIs and home runs. Tom Bernansky with the Twins. He has turned his season around, or what he usually does early. He's thrown a lot of home runs and RBIs on the board. Punch fist for strike. He doesn't like the call. You can hear his voice saying that ball is low and inside to Jerry Neudecker.
Jim Bernansky is hitting about 340 or 350, leading the league in that department.
He jammed him, got the ball in the kitchen. Brett to Balboni, they get Fisk. A nice, brisk ball game here in Royal Stadium, Kansas City. We'll go to the bottom of the fourth. Royals leading 1-0 over the... Tomorrow, a big day in sports on NBC. Hope you'll join Bruce Jenner, host the Bruce Jenner Track and Field Classic from San Jose, California. The best track and field people in the world will be there. Plus, WBC welterweight champion Milt McCrory moves out of his weight class to take on Luis Santana, scheduled 10-round fight. Tomorrow, 4 Eastern, 3 in Los Angeles only on NBC's Sports World. Tom Seaver, trailing 1-0, will face Balboni, Pat Sheridan, Frank White. One of the co-owners, a man who will complete the purchase of the ball club from Mr. and Mrs. Ewing Kaufman. Avron Fogelman, a man who loved Balboni in the minor leagues, had him on his minor league franchise, saw him hit all those home runs, and I don't know when he'll take over the club finally within the next 3 or 4 years and the buyout, whatever it is. Line drive, base set, left field, Balboni. He's 1 for 2 in the ball game, so he starts it off in the fourth for Dick Hauser's Royals.
The right fielder, Pat Sheridan.
Lee May, the hitting instructor, has worked with him. Balboni is a slugger. You're going to take the home runs, RBIs. You'll take the strikeouts. This spring, Balboni didn't strike out a whole lot coming out of spring training, and then he fell into a little bit of a rut. But he's on first with Sheridan at the plate. Drilled at Pachorek. He'll go 3 to 6. Gijan back. He's got it. Boy, there have been some balls. Crush to Pachorek. Did he call him safe at first? Marusa's going to argue, but he's going to come out and argue, say that Balboni slid out of the baseline or did a roadblock to upset Gijan, and that the runner at first, oh, they're saying Gijan missed the bag.
That's right, and if so, let's see if we can pick it up here. This would be Gijan's second error of the year, both in the same fashion, failing to touch second on the pivot.
Second base umpire Steve Palermo did not let Gijan get away with the phantom sweep of the right foot on the bag. Pachorek's ball drifted across the runner to the outfield side a little bit. Ball was not caught on the line. It was trapped by Pachorek, so he goes 3-6-3. Watch the right foot. Did he or didn't he? I believe the umpire, Palermo, made a good call. So many times that is automatic, but as the ball kept drifting further and further, tailing away from Gijan, he had to follow the ball, and when he one-handed it to try and get it, the foot was probably off the bag. It's the play that is usually almost an automatic. Many times the shortstop, what they'll tell you when they do the phantom tag with the foot, say when the base runners stop doing roadblocks, sliding out of the baseline, I'll make more certain I tag the bag.
The second baseman,
Can they give him an error? Can they anticipate that? I guess on this particular one, it's the scorer's judgment. He had the runner. Palermo said he missed the bag, so they've got a runner in scoring position with 1 out.
And it is scored E6, and as we said, both of Gijan's errors this season in just that fashion.
White jumps on Seaver's first pitch. Balboni tagging up at second base. Salazar can throw. He's not going anywhere. 2 outs.
the catcher, Jim Sundberg.
Tony, Jim Sundberg stepping in now, recently caught the 1,500th game of his major league career. He's third among active catchers behind Ted Simmons now with Milwaukee and Bob Boone of the Angels. The all-time record held by the Senor, the former White Sox manager Al Lopez. He caught almost 2,000 big league games.
Jim Sundberg with 2 outs. Balboni at second. First base open. Fouls a breaking ball. Seaver got it up, and he had a good swing. Kansas City sitting a game and a half in the West behind the California Angels. Gene Mock's back. Boy, I saw him manage a ball game out in California a couple weeks back when he stacked the lineup against Steve and just wore Dave Steve out. Just kept fouling pitches off. Minnesota in third place, 2 games out. Chicago 2.5 back. Oakland 4, Seattle 5, Texas on the bottom under Bobby Valentine. Fletcher to Pachorek. They retire Jim Sundberg after 4 here in Royal Stadium. There it is, Kansas City 1, Chicago nothing. We'll be right back after these messages from your local station. Along with the wacky, zany, wrestling devotee Bob Costas, Tony Kubek from Royal Stadium in Kansas City after 4 innings. Charlie Leibrandt takes the mound in the 5th with a shutout. He'll face Ron Kittle, Luis Salazar, Mark Hill.
This is the sort of abuse I must endure.
You and Hulk Hogan. Cyndi Lauper. What a day that was for you, huh?
Just a little walk on the wild side, just something for a laugh. Not my day in, day out bread and butter.
Well, the Twins are great wrestling fans. Andy Van Slyke of the Cardinals. 1 ball, 1 strike to Ron Kittle, who's in that deep slump. It doesn't only go early this year. It's the middle of that 83 season. He's hit just over 220, so they're very concerned. He gets jammed, something Leibrandt does so well. Sheridan broke back. Now he's got to hurry, but he's got outstanding speed. 1 out.
You know, Tony, people's careers in television last a whole lot longer than those of ball players, but eventually retirement comes around. And longtime technical director with NBC, Bruce Berquist, there he is after 35 years with NBC. He's retiring. This is his last event. Thank him for his good work and wish him well.
Yeah, get yourself a fishing hole, Bruce, and have some fun. You hear the name of Harry Coyle so often, Dick Klein directing today. The Bruce Berquist are the guys who make those big name people so famous.
He doesn't look old enough to retire, does he?
He's got to have the fast reflexes like a third baseman pushing those buttons when the director calls those shots. 1 ball, no strikes to Salazar. Charlie Leibrandt, he's been in and out, up and back with a change of speeds, another change of speeds, end of the bat. You don't hit too many on that 6-inch sweet spot on that lumber. Not with him out there. Concepcion throws him out. 6 in a row set down now. Hewlett got a base hit leading off the 3rd, and then Leibrandt picked him off. And a 3-up, 3-down inning of the 2nd. Been 2 little singles thus far. Fletcher leading off. He stole 2nd, was stranded. Hewlett was picked off, as we said.
Tony, it's my solemn duty to inform our listeners that we'll be selecting the NBC Light Beer from Miller Player of the Game at the conclusion of the contest.
Should be out of play, 3 rows back. A strike on Hill.
Too early to render a judgment at this point, with the Royals leading 1-0 in the top of the 5th. Boy, has this game moved along in contrast to most White Sox games. Of course, Fisk isn't catching today.
Well, there haven't been any base runners in most games because the additional time Commissioner Uberoth put in for more commercial time to be sold on local broadcast network. Plus, when you get a lot of base runners with a base running game becoming so dominant, a lot of time taken from Frank White, who's won those 6 Gold Gloves, throws out Mark Hill. 8 ground ball outs now thrown up by Leibrandt, middle of the 5th. Still, Royals 1, White Sox nothing.
Making plays like this one has helped Frank White to collect 6 Gold Gloves. He knew that with Mark Hill running, once he fielded the ball, he had plenty of time. In fact, Hill was joking with us. He says, you know, what really embarrasses me is all those balls I hit into the hole, and they throw me out from the outfield grass, and I'm not even in the picture yet. I don't arrive until 3 or 4 steps later.
Concepcion jumps on the first breaking ball from Tom Seaver. Scott Fletcher throws him out. So Seaver's retired 4 in a row now. Ground ball, nice play by Frank White. 9th ground ball out. Leibrandt had thrown up. Now it's Willie Wilson. He's grounded out twice. Fletcher comes in. Pachorik at first. Only one more play, more exciting than a triple. Is a Willie Wilson inside the park home run. He's got a bunch.
Well, Wilson has hit 19 career homers, and 13 of them have been inside the park. The homer he hit left-handed in Cleveland earlier this year, the first he's ever hit out of the park from the left side.
Seaver tried to do to Wilson what the Philadelphia Phillies did in that World Series. Keep busting the ball inside on Willie Wilson's fist. Chuck Hiller back in coaching now. Hiller was here under Whitey Herzog, then went to the Cardinals. Here's the guy you got Wilson to hit the ball the opposite way. Stop swinging hard. Nice play by Hewlett to retire Wilson. There are 2 outs.
The left fielder, Lonnie Smith.
The Mets continue to lead the Dodgers in the 4th now, 1-0. And if our game ends before that one does, we'll switch you to that so you can watch Gooden battle Valenzuela.
Montreal 2, San Francisco 1. Is Jeff Reardon having a year in relief? You don't hear about him much over the National League because of Suter and Gossage, some of the other fine relievers. Young Joe Hesketh, the left-hander, trying to anchor that staff. Looks like Lee will be out for the year after arthroscopic surgery. 1-1, Toronto-Cleveland, 3rd inning. Toronto is really playing great baseball.
Speaking of Toronto, their front office honcho, Pat Gillick, made the comment, you see less and less trades made these days on the basis of ability and more on the basis of salary. You're looking at one right here, Lonnie Smith.
Hit deep, but it may hook foul. He got a hanging curveball that just missed the left field foul pole.
Lonnie is making between $800,000 and $900,000 a year, and when Vince Coleman emerged, we'll watch his swing again.
Tom Seaver just rolled one up there. Look, Seaver won't look. He was probably saying to himself, I hope it hooks foul, and it did. Jams Lonnie Smith now. Count no balls, 2 strikes with 2 outs. Royals 1, White Sox nothing with the bottom of the 5th.
When Coleman emerged in St. Louis and Smith became expendable, the Cardinals really couldn't get, in terms of players, fair market value for him, because who is going to pick up that large a salary? You're going to begin to see more and more strange names in the agate type around baseball. Guys placed on waivers simply because no one will pick up the contract. The Steve Rogers, he'll land someplace, but only after he's cleared waivers.
2-2, 2 outs. Larry Gura's got another couple of days till Tuesday. Ground ball. Rumors that Gura may be going to the Cubs, St. Louis, maybe the Blue Jays. Seaver, another ground ball out. 3 up, 3 down inning. He's retired 6 in a row. 5 in the infield. There's your score. Royals 1.
Well, we've told you about the Sports Fantasies show, Len Berman's program, which follows baseball. And then it's Sports World music videos, too. We know Tony Kubek will make every effort to be in the airport lounge to see that one.
Is that tomorrow?
Today.
Today. Oh. Be on my way home. Tomorrow, I'd love to see Bruce Jenner Track and Field Classic, but I'm going to be in Milwaukee seeing Minnesota play.
George Bamberger back with the Brewers. Tim Hewlett's single then was picked off in his first at-bat. Takes a ball as we start the 6th. The Royals leading it 1-0.
Like so many teams last year and now again this year, especially in April, White Sox can't get a beat whether he's going inside or outside. They look outside, he breaks their back. They look inside, he takes the little change-up, shoots it away. Reminds you, a little bit of the way he changed speeds and has control of the outside edges of the plate of the Catfish Hunter. Of course, Catfish did it year after year after year.
2-1 to Hewlett. And he rips his second base hit of the ball game.
Lebrand hadn't gotten too many pitches up in the strike zone.
We'll be right back. First, let's check with Len in New York.
Well, Bob, the Dodgers just got the Dwight Gooden. This is Greg Brock homering deep to right field. John Christensen can't get it. It's Brock's 4th homer in 6 games. The Dodgers now lead it 2-1. Back to Kansas City now.
Thanks, Len. So maybe after those long struggles, Greg Brock has finally hit his stride. He's got a great-looking power swing. Guillen was squaring to bunt as Lebrand tossed over to Balboni.
That may have been a decoy by the kid. I'll say that. He is so smart. Hey, maybe the session that Greg Brock had with Ted Williams, a couple of hours in Winter Haven, maybe it's starting to kick in for him. Bon Hayes had a session 2 years ago with Ted Williams. What a bunt.
Good bunt by Guillen. Successful sacrifice. White covers.
Cookie Rojas, who's an advanced scout for the California Angels, scouting. He was talking about Guillen. That's Cookie Rojas with the glasses. He was on a pennant winner here. Man in front of him, a nice straw hat, Buck O'Neill. He played in the Negro American Leagues, if they recall then. 57 to what?
55. He regaled us with stories last night. Hank Bauer, your old teammate, was sitting around with us.
That fascinating. Sat for over an hour after the ball game, talking about Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson, Buck Leonard,
Cool Papa Bell.
Cool Papa Bell. Some of the antics of Satch.
A line drive to Brett. And Fletcher hit it well, but he's out of there.
When he gets the ball belt higher above, they've been able to hit it, but he's thrown very few pitches
The
in
first
that area.
baseman, Tom
White
Paciorek.
Sox. Everything's been down from mid-thigh to between the ankles and the knees.
Up steps Paciorek now. Tying run in scoring position with 2 out on the top of the 6th. Fouled away for strike 1. O'Neill told us about how Satchel Paige purposely walked the batter ahead of Cool Papa Bell to see if he could be the first to have Cool Papa ground into a double play as fast as he was. Purposely walked 2 men with a runner at third to load the bases so he could end the game by striking out Josh Gibson.
And he told his shortstop that he was going to have Cool Papa hit the ball right to him, and he did. A little different strategy here by Tony La Russa. You don't ever know what to expect. Having Guillen's sacrifice, you're down by 1 run in the 6th inning. Giving up an out.
The 1-1 to Paciorek.
Not that it is an absolute. One of the things been said about baseball games. That's Duncan to the right. Tony La Russa in the middle of your screen. Not that it's an absolute, but they usually say you play to tie at home and win on the road. The sacrifice that he pulled with Guillen goes a little bit against that. Hauser, who won 103 as a rookie manager for George Steinbrenner, and like so many, he was gone.
Lee Brandt has allowed the White Sox 3 hits. The Royals have 4 off Tom Seaver. 1-2 pitch. 2-2.
Sundberg is so smart. He gives the sign and the location, and with all the switches going on with Hewlett down at second base, and then he doesn't move too soon. He looks into the eyes of Paciorek, the hitter in this case, to see if Pachorek's looking down to try and find out location, and then he kind of glides in or out. See him look up? Now, there he goes. Doesn't move too soon.
Brett at third. Good hop for him. Long throw takes care of Paciorek. So for the White Sox in the 6th, no runs, a hit, no errors, a man is left. Still 1-0 KC.
Leading off for
George Brett, we saw his brother Ken last night at the ballpark. He's heading for Utica, New York. Managed the Utica Blue Sox, Class A ball. One of the few independent clubs left in organized baseball, not affiliated with any major league franchise. Strike 1 as Seaver took something off it.
He threw fastballs early. He's mixed in a couple of slow curves.
You know the story behind Ken Brett getting that Utica job. He did that beer commercial in which he detailed all the travels, the several ball clubs he had been with in the majors and in the minors, and he was ticking off cities, and the last one was Utica. He looked in the camera and said, Utica? And they started to kid him. He got letters from Utica. The mayor sent him the key to the city. They invited him to come to town. And eventually he winds up as manager of the ball club there. 2-1.
So far, the 3 pitches, Seaver has not shown George Brett the same one. A little straight change. That was a curveball or slurve. Ran a fastball away. Sinker.
Hewlett, he had him played deep, and from what would be the outfield grass, he throws him out, and George is 0 for 3.
Interesting to see what will happen when Julio Cruz comes back and is ready to play. Hewlett, he's got a little bit of pop. Playing this way defensively, whose job will be at stake. They gave a big contract to Julio Cruz 2 off seasons ago.
George Order now, he's doubled and grounded out. Well, one thing is for sure, they won't be rushing Julio back.
10 ground ball outs thrown by Tom Seaver. Charlie Lebrand has thrown up 11. Another one.
Guillen charging in. One hands and throws Orta out.
That tradition of Venezuelan shortstops, huh? Got him with the White Sox. Harris Carroll, Aparicio, Eugene, Concepcion, of course, in Cincinnati. Rojas was talking about this kid. He said, you know, let him play. He said, people don't realize how much baseball Latin American players play. You know, they're playing sometimes 200 ball games a year. Growing up, before they become professionals, they're playing every day.
Balboni hit it on the nose, but right at Salazar. And the Royals go out 1-2-3 once again in the 6th. Still a 1-0 ball game, and we'll be right back after these messages from your local station. Gorgeous day in Kansas City. Good crowd at Royal Stadium. We move to the 7th inning. Kansas City leading the White Sox 1-0. We remind you this telecast is presented by authority of Major League Baseball and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the express written consent of Major League Baseball. It'll be Baines, Fisk, and Kittle in the Chicago 7th. 0-3-1 for the White Sox. 1-4-0 for Kansas City. Ball 1 to Harold Baines.
Mike Lum, the hitting instructor, has worked with Harold Baines. Lum, like late Charlie Loud, Walt Riddick at Boston, they talk a lot about weight shift, keeping the hands back. The problem that George Brett had coming out of the spring of the year when he was 0 for 20-something and everybody panicked, said he lost too much weight, and said the hands were coming forward. See if Baines touches that bat, the barrel, to that left shoulder. Try and keep the hands back. A little bit late on the fastball.
And Lee Brandt ahead of him 1-2. Kansas City right now is 3 over 500. The White Sox are a game over 500. There's a hidden story in the standings in the American League West, and we'll get to it in just a little bit. The White Sox and Kansas City began the season playing against American League East clubs exclusively. So take a look at this. If you figure Texas isn't a factor in the race, and that's a reasonable assumption, Chicago and Kansas City have fewer games, far fewer remaining against the tougher American League East than do the other potential contenders in their division. Kansas City was 18-17 in their season opening tour against Eastern Division clubs. Chicago was 17-16, and you have to figure that both Hauser and La Russa felt that their clubs could play 500 or maybe a little better against the tough AL East and then get into their own division. They'd be satisfied with that. A bouncer to second. High hop, but White handles and barely gets Baines.
The difference between the East and West this year, as far as quality of teams as opposed to last year and the year before, is not as extreme. Here's that bouncy turf. Baines got like a hanging slider or cut fastball that he looked like he was on. He rolled those wrists over and topped it. Saw the bounce.
Oh, I agree with you. There's no question the American League West is far more respectable, but it's also pretty clear that the East is still the better division.
In fact, you'd have to say right now that the Royals pitching staff, the way it shapes up, with the youngsters and Quisenberry in the bullpen, is probably better than Boston's at this stage, the Yankees at this stage. You know, and if pitching is 75% of the game, it depends upon the individual on the mound that day. And if pitching can be so dominant, perhaps some of these teams are extremely underrated this year. And then I'm not trying to play devil's advocate with you and just disagree with you, but you got Quisenberry down there. You got Bob James if he keeps throwing like he can, and if Bannister comes around and Dotson comes around, and Burns had a bad outing yesterday, but he's been outstanding along with Seaver. These pitching staffs, you look at the position players, you say, okay, the East might be stronger. When you look at pitching staffs, you might change your tune a little bit. Young pitchers over with California Angels and Gene Mock. I'll tell you what, Oakland could score runs. Look at Seattle's pitching staff. Moore and Young and Beatty and Langston if his elbow gets well.
Here comes a 2-1 pitch to Fisk. Did he go around? They check it first. And the word from Larry McCoy is that he did. 2-2. On the other hand, Toronto has improved their pitching this year with the addition of Caudle and Lavelle in the bullpen and the resurgence of Lamp and Acker. Let's see if Fisk did go. Well, far enough, sure. 2-2. In the dirt, full count.
Interesting how things happen, though. Caudle really hasn't thrown the ball that well. He's picking up saves and a few in. Jim Acker's been throwing the ball well for him. Dennis Lamp's been outstanding, who kind of struggled last year in the stopper role.
The Tigers add a guy like Walt Terrell to a pitching staff that was already pretty good, maybe not that deep in the starters, and they address that problem. Brett to his left. Low throw, but Balboni is able to handle it, and Fisk is gone.
Dick Hauser was talking about the agility of Balboni. He's had trouble, as we told you earlier, with the throwing, starting at 3.63 or getting the lead runner in a sacrifice. But he's got pretty good hands. And as big as he is, I don't know who it was, nicknamed him the condominium when he stepped in the batter's box one time, but he's got a pretty good pair of hands. They're guarding the lines. A one-run lead late in the ballgame. Brett and Balboni just about a stride or so to keep the ball from shooting in the corner for an extra base hit. There's your defensive alignment. Lonnie Smith and Sheridan have gone way back now. They want a ball, especially with 2 outs, hit over their head.
2-0 to Kittle. All the talk about his difficulty handling the curveball. Tony La Russa says the problem is that Kittle swings at too many breaking balls out of the strike zone. If he can be patient enough to make them throw the curveball in the strike zone, he can handle it. In fact, he feels that when Kittle first came up and throughout the latter stages of his minor league career, he was a better than average curveball hitter. But he's become so impatient now.
Most curveball strikeouts are off bad curveballs or sliders. So the good pitchers make their living. A wrinkle on the ball destroyed a lot of hitters.
Here comes the 3-0, taken for a strike. I see that Kittle has abandoned the war paint that he had smeared on before the game. Going with the fresh-faced look now.
He's got a hitter's pitch right now. He's going to be swinging hard and close.
Drew a walk. You know, an illustration of Kittle's difficulty with good curveball pitchers. Against Mike Boddicker lifetime, Ron Kittle is 0 for 13 with 7 strikeouts. And Boddicker, obviously a guy with a great curveball, a command of a variety of breaking pitches, changes speeds on them.
See, things like that can be deceiving. I mean, Boddicker, the whole league hits just over 200 off him. I mean, nobody hits him well. He wouldn't be winning that many ball games.
0 for 13 is kind of extreme, though, isn't it? With 7 strikeouts, Salazar takes strike 1.
So he gets 3 hits in a row, and he's hitting 300 off him.
Well, I'll tell you what. La Russa believes it, because Boddicker has started twice this year against the White Sox, and Kittle didn't play in either game. He pinch hit in one of them, and Boddicker struck him out.
Sometimes you can take those computers and throw them in the drink.
Salazar bounces it foul, 0-2.
Give you an idea of the respect that Leibrandt just had for Kittle. It was 3 balls, 1 strike. And he sees Salazar up next, who is an unlikely home run hitter, or not as likely as Kittle, and he bounced the ball to him. I don't care if he's in a slump. He's the guy that can get them back, get them a tie with 1 swing of the bat.
I'm sure anybody who can hit the long ball like he can is a presence, especially in a close ball game. Salazar was 1 for 19 coming into last night's game, and before the game, standing around the batting cage, he got hit by the backswing of Tom Seaver's bat. Seaver was playing pepper, and down went Salazar. He was really down. He goes here, swinging and missing.
He
But
can
when he
get
cleared
hitters
the
out inside, can he? Wow.
Cleared the cobwebs out of his head, and Salazar then went 2 for 4 in the game. Here's another edition of Baseball Remembers.
Old Spice presents Baseball Remembers. Brought to you by new Old Spice Solid Antiperspirant. It keeps you so much drier you just might want to switch from your old antiperspirant mid-stick. Ted Williams remembers his 1946 All-Star confrontation with Rip Sewell's Eephus pitch.
Well, he was having good success in the league, and of course that pitch was the one and only type of pitch in baseball. He was the only one that threw it. And we knew that going into the All-Star game. We talked about it, all the American players, and we just about decided that that pitch, you know, you couldn't hit it out. He threw me one, it was a ball, and then he threw another one. And I'd seen one, and here it come again, and I just kind of took a little bit of a step to really get everything I could get into it. And I hit it right flush, and it just barely got out, you know, a ball that didn't have much speed to it. But I had all the conditions going right, so it made it.
So we saw Ted Williams on Baseball Remembers. 34 years ago today, Willie Mays made his major league debut. You know, that can't be right. I don't think it would have been his major league debut on... Oh, yeah, it could have been. Yeah, he started that season in the minor leagues. Here's one of the most famous moments from his career. Game 1, 54
That's a great
series.
catch, but the amazing thing is the throw. He threw that ball about, well, it looked like it was close to 400 feet in the air. Vic Wertz.
Wertz was 4 for 5 that afternoon, and if Willie hadn't robbed him, he would have had the first ever 5-for-5 World Series game.
Do you think Tom Seaver hasn't learned to sink the fastball now? He's retired 9 in a row. 7 by ground ball outs. Last 7. 7 of the last 9. This will show that little curve to show him an extra pitch to some left-handed hitters. Fletcher in tight in case Sheridan wants to bunt.
We're in the last of the 7th. 1-1 now to Sheridan. He singled and grounded out. 1-2. Here's Hewlett. Little tricky hop, but he handles it for the first out.
Seaver started this ball game with that riding fastball. Not as hard as he once threw, of course. And boy, the last 4 innings or so, he just keeps turning the ball over, probably going. Basically, early in his career, he was a 4-seam fastball. He used all 4 seams to ride the fastball and run it away from a left-handed hitter. Big part of this game now, the last 5 innings maybe, he's used a 2-seamer, maybe even a dry spinner on occasion, where you don't touch any seams. Getting charitable in that comment. Boy, some balls are really dropping off the table.
To Frank White. Swing and a miss for strike 1. That graphic, by the way, about Willie Mays was correct. Willie began the 1951 season in the minors, was hitting over 400. Leo DeRocher sent for him, and he became the Rookie of the Year in 1951 for the pennant-winning Giants. Didn't know better than to doubt John Filippelli and the rest of his crew.
Wonder how Willie's first manager in the Major Leagues is doing. Leo DeRocher. Coming out west.
2-2 now to White. I saw Leo a couple of years ago at Wrigley Field for a Cubs old-timers game. He came up in the booth with us, and I tell you, he was about as outspoken as anybody can be. I was, frankly, surprised at some of the things he said over the air. Grounded toward short. In comes Guillen. Quick release, and he's got Frank White.
You were surprised that Leo was controversial?
The catcher,
What? He went beyond controversial, and I wish I could elaborate, but I don't want to get into more hot water. He had some very incriminating things to say about some very famous people.
13 ground ball outs now, thrown up by Tom Seaver. He's retired 11 in a row. 9 of those 11 been ground balls to the infield.
But right now he's trailing 1-0.
Seaver does not put many base runners on. He's walked a few more this year than he normally would. So I think the amazing stat about his control, and Tom Seaver believes in pitching inside, is the few times he has hit batters in his Major League career. Going into this season, over 4,400 innings pitched, he hit just 68 batters. And that's incredible. You know, that's like 1 every 65 innings. Since the White Sox in Cincinnati had him, he's hit 1 in every 124 innings. Contrast that with Walter Johnson, the Major League leader. He hit 206. 1 every 28. Hall of Famer Don Drysdale not here today. He's got the day off with the Hawk Harrelson. He's got the National record, 154.
That one might drop in off Sundberg's bat, and it does. Baines fields it. Sundberg with a wide turn, but he'll hold with a 2-out single. You know, they say the big train, Walter Johnson, lived in mortal fear of hitting someone with that fastball and truly hurting him. And yet, despite the fact that he is said to have tried very hard not to pitch tight, as you say, he hit more batters than anybody in big league history. Sometimes the myth doesn't jive with the fact.
11 in a row streak is done. Sundberg singles to right. One hit hard. He jammed him.
Ball 1 now to Onyx Concepcion.
Neither pitcher has thrown a lot. Talking to Seaver yesterday, he was saying his arm has never felt better, although he just got some kind of creak in his elbow. Because he walked behind the mound. Something happened to him. He's trying to regroup now. I wonder if that'll bring a trip from Duncan or LaRussa. Something, I don't know how seriously, happened to his elbow on that last pitch. Breaking ball. Trying to shake it off. Still begging for time.
set. Here's the 1-0. Line drive caught by Guillen. So the Royals get a base runner on the 2-out hit by Sundberg, but Jim is stranded, and it's still a 1-0 duel.
We'll show you Seaver's reaction on the slider that he threw to Onyx Concepcion in the last hitter of the 7th. Watch his little twinge he gets in his elbow. Still don't have anybody warming up in the White Sox bullpen. What was Bob Gibson's great statement when he was talking about guys like Koufax and Drysdale and Carlton and himself? Hard throw. He said, when you throw that hard, it's supposed to hurt your arm. Use that as a role model for other young pitchers. Go out there and pitch through pain.
Lonnie Smith will handle the fly ball off Mark Hill's bat for the first out in the 8th. And let's check with Len Berman in New York.
Thank you, Bob. Top of the 6th inning at Shea. It's Ken Landreau for the Dodgers. It's a base hit up the middle. Mookie Wilson will not make a throw. Here comes Steve Sachs to score. So Fernando and company now lead Gooden and the Mets 3-1. All right, Bob and Tony.
So Fernando, for the moment at least, out-dueling Gooden. Meanwhile, Leibrandt and Seaver continue to match zeros here in Kansas City with one exception. Bottom of the 2nd, the Royals scored the game's only run, and Leibrandt has the thinnest of margins to work with here in the 8th. 1-1. If this game ends before the action is complete at Shea Stadium, we'll send you to Vin Scully and Joe Garagiola, the Mets and the Dodgers. Hewlett is 2 for 2. The White Sox have only 3 hits off Leibrandt. Fletcher got the first one leading off the ball game, and since then, only Hewlett has been able to solve Charlie Leibrandt.
Irony of the only run scored in this ball game. Horta doubled, scored the only run. He's the man who was signed originally out of the Mexican leagues. 8 general managers in baseball. Riley Heeman, the White Sox. Chuck Tanner threw Horta in the lineup at shortstop. Got a double his first time up. Very little minor league experience, except for the Mexican leagues. Good DH last year, this year, Horta for this Royals team. They're struggling along with Toronto and the Dodgers before that.
And a payoff pitch. Hewlett sends it down the right side, and it's out of play with Sheridan going over for a look.
Imagination, or is Leibrandt now starting to get a few more pitches up in the strike zone?
Looked like it.
Last 2. Quisenberry pitched 3 innings last night. He had that little, about a 10-day slump. Couldn't throw strikes, and what he did, they were too good. I believe if Hauser needed him, he could go an inning. Joe Beckwith's pitched well out of that bullpen also. Mike Jones, who came off a car accident, thought he may never pitch again, let alone be mobile at all. He's getting a little bit better every time out, they tell me.
Hewlett has spoiled a couple of 3-2 offerings from Leibrandt. Here we go again. In the air to right field. Sheridan almost in his tracks. 2 out.
If Leibrandt has thrown a pitch from the meat of the plate, I haven't seen too many.
Walker is going to bat for Guillen now. Greg Walker. A long ball threat.
For the shortstop, Guillen, number 29.
One place they want Walker to improve in, hitting left-handed pitchers better. He is a pure hitter, folks. Charlie Lau said, I wouldn't touch a thing with this guy when I first saw him.
Strike 1 from Leibrandt.
Lau talked about the 2 kids that came up at the time, Kittle and Walker. Went through the farm system together. He said, we got a slugger and Kittle. He said, but the hitter, he's going to be Greg Walker.
Well, if you were concerned about Leibrandt getting some pitches up, which he did against Hewlett, 2 good low strikes to start Walker.
He hasn't thrown a whole lot of pitches, nor has Tom Seaver.
1-2.
There have been only 2 walks in the ball game. Each pitcher's given up 1. Only 8 base hits.
Stays alive. The last time Leibrandt pitched, Monday at Texas, he worked 5 1/3. It was a no decision. That's the only time this season he's failed to get as far as the 7th inning. Here he is about to complete the 8th with 2 out and leading 1-0. And he's thrown 3 complete games already this year. What a turnaround for him. He hadn't pitched a complete game in 4 years before this season. Walker swings and misses.
Only the 3rd strike on the ball game, and Lebrand has 2 of those 3.
Still 1-0. Lebrand and the Royals. Walker hit for Guillet and struck out to end the top of the 8th, so Guillet is gone. Brian Little goes in to play third base, the former Montreal Expo, and moving from third to short is Scott Fletcher.
Both bullpens going now. Tom Seaver with that little twinge. Apparently told Tony LaRusse he's okay. Joe Beckwith, former Dodger, begins throwing. He really came along last year, setting up Quisenberry with the finisher. He may be the finisher today, although he's had a couple of rough outings, last couple times out only.
Seaver trying to keep it close and then hope that his teammates will have the top of the order in the bottom of the 9th, or top of the 9th, I should say, can do something against Charlie Lebrand. Willie Wilson is 0 for 3. A ball and a strike. Thinking about the matchup between Valenzuela and Gooden today in New York. And that changeup swung on and missed by Wilson. Reminds me that Seaver, and this obviously is more coincidence than a true reflection of their respective abilities. Seaver was 11-3 lifetime head-to-head against Steve Carlton when they were both in the National League, the pitcher to whom he was most frequently compared. Willie Wilson strikes out. Just the 2nd strikeout recorded by Seaver.
He threw him a little curveball a bit before this, had him set up with that, and then he busts this up and in. Look at Markell. He doesn't move around too much. That was right over the plate, but still a little extra on it. Seaver, a pitcher who doesn't like his catcher to move in and out. He wants him to square up directly behind home plate, and he pitches for the 2 knees and the 2 shoulders, the knee guards and the shoulders. That is his delineation of the strike zone, and he aims for those targets. A lot of pitchers want their catchers moving in and out, up and down.
The Royals sent a highly regarded minor league outfielder named John Morris to the Cardinals in exchange for Lonnie Smith, and it's an illustration of what we were talking about. Morris is a fine prospect, but in terms of player value, Smith, lifetime 300-plus hitter, only 29 years old. He should bring more than that, but the salary gets in the way. Larry Gura was released to make a spot for Smith on the Royal roster. And now teams will wait for Gura to clear waivers in a couple of days before they consider signing him. Again, because of the contract. They pick him up after he's cleared waivers, and the Cubs have said they might. Then they just have to pay him $40,000, and the Royals pick up the rest of the obligation. 2 pitch. Swung on and missed. So Seaver, who had fanned only 1 coming into this inning, opens with a couple of strikeouts.
I thought, Tom, maybe the slider was going to be unavailable to him anymore today when he had that little twinge to Concepcion. And I think he threw him a hard slider right here. Yep. Hard slider, cut fastball, one or the other.
George was at 301 coming in. The 0 for 3 has dropped him 6 points. And this will pick the average up a little bit. Extra bases into the right field corner. Baines plays the carom, and Brett has a 2-out double.
That ball was in, probably off the plate. Seaver, I believe, got it right where he wanted to.
Designated hitter, George Marta.
This will give Orta a chance.
First base is open, and with 2 outs, it's going to bring a trip from LaRusse. He's going to let Seaver make his own decision. Got a left-hander throwing down in the White Sox bullpen. LaRusse is going to talk over the situation. 2 outs, first base is open. Orta has got a double, the run scored. He's been swinging the bat well. You've got Bell Boney behind you, right-handed. Tim Lawler, who was in the 5-man starting rotation. He's been shuffled off to the bullpen for a while. He's had some trouble throwing strikes.
Actually, he's scheduled to pitch Tuesday at Comiskey against Toronto, which wouldn't preclude the possibility of his working to a couple of batters here.
Converse conversation with LaRussa and Seaver, I'm assuming, is the arm okay first of all, but then basically okay. Tom, you're the veteran. You've got to decide for sure. I'm not going to make it for you. You want to intentionally walk him? You want to pitch carefully to him? A young kid, LaRussa would have made the decision.
Orta trying to pick Brett up, who's at second base, and provide a little breathing room for Charlie Leibrandt. Strike one on the foul ball.
The setting Seaver's gone away from the sinker. Used that sinker so effectively from the 3rd through the 7th. Now he's starting to ride the fastball again. Throw the hard slider. Changed his pattern 3 times in this game. Started out throwing the fastball hard, some sliders. Went from the 3rd through the 7th, throwing some slow curves, sinking the fastball. Now he's back to power a little bit more.
He can still throw at 88, 89 miles an hour. The difference is he can't do it 10 or 12 pitches. Oh, man. Thank heavens for the helmet. The fans are booing, and Orta tosses his bat aside angrily, but obviously that was not Seaver's intention, and it's coincidental that it should happen because it was only a few minutes ago, Tony, that you were talking about how infrequently Seaver has hit batters throughout his career.
I think there's Mickey Cobb, the trainer, out now. I think basically Seaver was trying to get a little bit extra on a fastball up and in, and this may be the hardest pitch he's thrown the entire game. Boy, Orta tried to get out of the way, but he just, thank heavens for the late Branch Rickey. Joe Garagiola was on that ball club with the Pirates, but Branch Rickey made him wear the helmets, not only at bat, running the bases and everything else. Saved a lot of severe injuries.
Balboni is 1 for 3. Takes high.
Seaver now just over 90 pitches, and he's got a lot left.
At third base, it's knocked down by Little. He'll be charged with an error, and the bases are loaded.
A little different ball game when you're at third. Remember Brian Little out of the Montreal organization, basically a shortstop. We tried him second, where the ball does not get to you as quickly. But on this stuff, especially from a hitter like Balboni, hits the ball so hard and it picks up that top spin, and those ground balls just eat you up. Go right up the heel of his glove, up his arm. He did keep it in front of him, so run didn't score.
So after Seaver opened the frame by fanning Wilson and Smith, Brett doubled to right. Orta was hit by a pitch, and now an error on Balboni's grounder by Little loads the bases for Sheridan. He's 1 for 3. Broken bat, foul ball.
He still has that hard slider, doesn't he? Saved it for the last few innings. Mechanics are so important to Tom Seaver. Heard and seen the Ted Williams and Charlie Lau books on hitting. Seaver's written several books on pitching. His latest is a classic. It deals with mechanics and lower body action, arm action, training techniques, injuries. It's become the Bible, one of the Bibles among books for young and veteran pitchers.
Outside and low, 1-1. Sheridan has hit 2 homers this year. He has 1 career grand slam. 2 outs, last of the 8th, bases loaded. And a drive into right center field. Baines is on his horse, and Harold Baines can't get it.
Ground rule double.
Up and over the fence for a ground rule double, and I don't know if Baines misjudged that or what, but he came up short.
I don't think he did. Sheridan hasn't been hitting well. He was playing relatively shallow. And they positioned their defense many times through a computerized system. They run foul line to foul, A to Z, and they have all kinds of things. Baines ran as hard as he could, as long as he can, and he just barely missed it. Might have been another run, but the 2 that scored may be enough now. May have broken it open.
If it had stayed in play, with 2 out, 3 runs might have scored, although Balboni was the runner at first, so he might have had a little bit of difficulty coming around. As it is, the ground rule double scores 2.
2 unearned runs. The inning should have been over.
And the White Sox are staring at their 5th loss in a row and possibly 6 of 7. Frank White. Three and 1.
Boy, he was so good, wasn't he? Could have been out of this. Should have been a 1-0 ball game. This team still was in it. Fletcher, Shark, and Baines coming up.
The walk to White loads the bases again, and here comes Sundberg.
So the hit batsman didn't help him. The air killed him in the center.
Catcher, Jim Sundberg.
The White Sox coming in, Tony, had made fewer errors than any team in the American League. They've been guilty of 2 today. And the second one really hurt. Strike 1.
Kansas City with that young staff leading the American League in team ERA. Defensive alignment looks like with the bases jammed on Tom Seaver. Should have been sitting in the dugout.
Bounce to short. Fletcher on the second hop. Barely got him. And Frank White doesn't think so.
Wow. Frank White got an outstanding jump off first base, and it was close.
Fletcher played it on the second hop, and it almost cost him. The Royals get 2 insurance runs on Sheridan's double.
He's now playing left field for Kansas City.
Judge for yourself. Was White out at second base? Steve Palermo, acknowledged to be one of the best umpires in the American League, said yes. Fletcher.
Fletcher coming over from third base. He gave that little flip throw, and he threw a changeup to Hewlett. Hauser argued mildly. New left fielder for Lonnie Smith. Lynn Jones out there now for the Royals.
Ball 1 to Fletcher. And now a ball and a strike. Lee Brandt with a little breathing room now. Up 3-0 and working on a 3-hitter. Fletcher has 1 of those 3 hits. First inning single. They're in the 7th now at Shea, behind Fernando. The Dodgers lead Gooden and the Mets 3-1, and we're going there at the conclusion of this ball game, unless the White Sox rally and send us beyond this top half of the 9th. Back to Lee Brandt. 2 outs away from the shutout.
14 ground ball outs now by Charlie Lee Brandt.
The first baseman.
Watch the follow through. The ball's released. Is your 5th infield. It's a little crow hop, as it's called. Make sure he's got a good grip.
If Lee Brandt gets it, it'll be his 2nd shutout of the year. He blanked Toronto on April 22nd, 2-0. It'll be his 5th win against 2 defeats, and if Seaver winds up the loser, he'll be 4-3. Ball 1 to Paciorek.
That front edge of the home plate area is 17 inches wide. A little black around there. And Charlie Lee Brandt, Seaver most of the day, Lee Brandt more than Tom, they did not use the middle 12 or 13 inches. Charlie Lee Brandt not only used the edges, he changed speeds great today. I mean, just off a change up, a breaking ball, a fastball. Big variation speeds.
2-1 now. Folks, when we do this, it doesn't mean we're giving up on the White Sox chances. It means we've got to take care of this business, and we'll shuffle you off to Shea if this game does end soon. We want to do that as quickly as possible. So we'll tell you the executive producer of NBC Sports is Michael Weissman. Here's the 2-1 to Paciorek. 3-1. The coordinating producer for NBC's baseball is Harry Coyle. The telecast of today's Game of the Week, produced by John Filippelli, directed by Richard Klein. Pre-game produced by Les Dennis. Pre-game directed by Mary Buta Lamusio. On the corner of Full Count, our technical directors today, for the last time in his career, Bruce Berquist. Many happy days in retirement, Bruce, and Richard Sanseville.
And when this is over, you fans will have a chance to pull up a chair and sit in with Vin and Joe.
In the air to right field, Sheridan will be there, and Lee Brandt is one away.
Well, for a guy who's been struggling a little bit in May, opposed to a brilliant April, Lee Brandt has been sensational.
The right fielder, Harold
You would
Baines.
have to say at this point, picking an MVP, and I don't think we'll have a split decision on this, Charlie Lee Brandt.
Unless the roof caves in, this week's NBC Light Beer from Miller Player of the Game is Charlie Lee Brandt. Light Beer from Miller is happy to present a check for $1,000 in his name to help fight multiple sclerosis. Strike one to Harold Baines. He's 0 for 3 today and 2 for his last 33 at-bats.
Here's a guy who's coming up next, Dodgers Mets. If the Kansas City staff hadn't been struggling last year, he may have spent the entire year in the minor leagues, but 7-1, brilliant ERA. Omaha, the opportunity was there, and he hasn't messed it up, has he? Even with the power pitchers they've got, Jackson and Gubiza, and Black's basically power slider, good fastball. That little variation, the variable, the guy that changes speed from the left side.
1-2 to Baines. Off the fists and out of play. Danny Jackson beat Britt Burns last night. Lee Brandt on the verge of a victory today. And a pair of left-handers will go tomorrow. Bud Black and Floyd Bannister to finish the series. Again, the 1-2. Right back to Lee Brandt. He'll take care of business himself. What a brilliant effort. He outduels Tom Seaver. He hands the White Sox their 5th consecutive loss. Kansas City wins it 3-0 on the complete game 3-hitter by Lee Brandt.
Ground balls out, thrown by Charlie Lee Brandt, and you figure there are just 27 outs in the ball game, Bob. He faced 31 people, and he picked one of those, or one was caught stealing. That was Hewlett when he picked him off. What a game.
A rarity for a White Sox ball game, too, and Fisk didn't have much to do with it. It was the pitchers. The game took 2 hours and 1 minute. Let's go to New York and join Vin and Joe.